Good evening, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, I thought that I would review this little video about this one channel called Boxing Ego, just because I thought that this topic, once again, would be very interesting to talk about. But this is going to give me a little bit of a platform to talk about a multitude of things in this video. First off, when it comes down to it, of course, is going to be that of Mr. George Kambosos Jr. And we've already talked about this quite a few times when it comes down to it. But I thought, all in all, that I would talk about it because the big question is about George Kambosos Jr. Who is going to get that fight next? And it does seem to be, in my opinion, a three-man race. One man, of course, who could potentially get that fight is Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis, who, in my opinion, is the most talented 135-pounder in the world right now and the biggest star there. Another one, of course, is the current WBC champion. And if he were to get that fight with, of course, George Kambosos Jr., it would be the complete unification fight. Of course, that is Mr. Devin Haney, the current WBC champion, or the former somewhat unified former number one 135-pounder in the world, Mr. Vasyl Lomachenko, who is going to get this fight. If you had to ask me, in my opinion, who I personally think just at the time is going to get the fight, if I had to guess more than likely, I think that it is going to be Mr. Vasyl Lomachenko. Now, of course, nothing has been confirmed at the current moment in time, but Mr. George Kambosos, when I did see him speak, it seems like out of any other opponent that he is most interested in facing next, it seems like it is Vasyl Lomachenko. And Vasyl Lomachenko, he may be 33 years old, and he may not handle the 135-pound division as well as some of the other ones, but Vasyl Lomachenko still is a very, very big threat to anyone out there. And I think all in all that even if you were to talk about a Vasyl Lomachenko versus a Devin Haney fight, or if you were to talk about Vasyl or Devin Haney getting the George Kambosos fight, if you actually were to put it up on the polls and ask the majority of boxing fans out there, what fight would you rather see? I think that the majority of boxing fans actually would rather see Vasyl Lomachenko versus George Kambosos. Why is that, do I believe? Because I think a lot of people want to see Vasyl Lomachenko possibly regain his titles back. Of course, this, especially a certain amount of the probably Caucasian demographic, but it just is what it is. It's whatever. Vasyl Lomachenko, in my opinion, he is a very decently great fighter, but we do have to wonder, how great of a fighter is he really? And I've already asked this question a multitude of times, but I think a certain amount of these people realize that Vasyl Lomachenko, more than likely, he is probably going to get that George Kambosos Jr. fight. So not only are they going to try to tear down that fight, and I get it to a degree because the Devin Haney fight I think would be a great fight. Of course, it would be a complete unification fight. But I think another reason why they're tearing down the Vasyl Lomachenko versus George Kambosos fight, Boxing Ego is even going to go as far as to say that he would rather see Ryan Garcia versus that of a George Kambosos. Now, why is that? Is it because all in all that he truly believes that there's just new blood that needs to get in there? No, it's because they know that if Vasyl Lomachenko is able to actually regain those titles, they know all in all that the hype train is going to go back on the rails. And that's not me saying that Vasyl Lomachenko is a hype job, because I don't think he is. I don't think that you can defeat the fighters and have the skill set that he has and be just known as a hype job, especially when you're a three-weight division champion and you've won a multitude of A-grade fights in your career, like a Guillermo Rigondeaux, like a Gary Russell Jr., like a Nicholas Walters, even a Jorge Linares at that point in time, if you want to debate that. But the big question is about Vasyl Lomachenko. If he can get his hands on George Kambosos, will he be able to perform a hell of a lot better than what he did in that Teofimo Lopez performance? It'll be very, very interesting. And another big question is, who is he going to go after that George Kambosos Jr. fight? I have a very good idea who he's going to have to try to go after next, and in my opinion, is going to be Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. Vasyl Lomachenko has been calling out Gervonta Tank Davis for the past several years, and every time, overall, that Gervonta Tank Davis, every time that Vasyl Lomachenko's name is mentioned around this dude, this man always has the face on this, or he always has the look on his face like he just shit his pants a little. It just is what it is. But anyways, Mr. Boxing Ego is going to talk about it. Let's get into it.
Lomachenko is trying to fight George Kambosos in Australia, says his promoter, Bob Arum. Will Devin Haney get jerked out of another opportunity to fight for titles? These are the things I will talk about in this video. Stay tuned. Look, what up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to my channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. I am the best doing it. Now, Bob Arum is trying to make Vasyl Lomachenko. It says Lomachenko, quote, well prepared to challenge George Kambosos, and that's the fight his team is trying to get over the line. And it says Vasyl Lomachenko first choice to fight is George Kambosos in his home of Australia, Lomachenko, who in turn surprisingly lost to Teofimo. And I don't see why people keep addressing it like that. See, this is the problem with old media. Old media, they'll frame something and they'll make it look like. First of all, I don't I don't immortalize these fighters. These are just regular people who fight for a living. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people.
Well, I would agree with you if you actually treated all fighters like that, but we all know, Mr. Ego, that you do not do that because you worshipped fighters like a Deontay Wilder on a godlike level. And that's the reason why you were so disappointed, almost to the point of tears, when he lost that fight against Tyson Fury.
Treat these fighters like they're superheroes and they're incapable of losing or infallible. Like I don't see that. So whoever wrote this, they said Lomachenko, who in turn surprisingly lost.
And even if we're going to talk about the Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez loss, I predicted Lomachenko at the time to win by decision over Teofimo Lopez. But I never thought that Lomachenko was going to dominate Teofimo Lopez because Lomachenko was having a very difficult time with that weight. At least he did not look as dominant before. Some people say maybe he was slowing down. Some people maybe say because of injuries. It could be a little bit of both. But at the end of the day, what do I think it is? I just think that Lomachenko, even for how skilled he is, he's obviously going to have a bigger problem with these guys. Lomachenko is a person that, in terms of weight, you can argue that he's a natural 126 to 130 pounder. That's where he started off. It just is what it is. And when you talk about some of these 135 pounders like a Ryan Garcia or Devin Haney or Teofimo Lopez, some of these guys with their height and stature, they could be natural 140 pounders. And I just don't think, all in all, that Lomachenko, I don't think that he's a Canelo Alvarez or something like that to where he can really handle the bigger stature fighters like that. It just is what it is.
To Lopez. It wasn't a surprise because I picked Teofimo to beat Lomachenko. I turned out to be right. Says since responded with two emphatic wins. Not really. I mean, he fought Kome and Nakatani.
You can tell overall this dude hates Lomachenko's guts. And that's the main reason why he don't want that Lomachenko versus George Kambosos Jr. fight to happen. And I get it to a certain degree, but like I said, Mr. Ego has his own politics as well. It just is what it is. The reason why they don't want Lomachenko to get that fight is because they know whoever gets George Kambosos next, that's pretty much going to be the golden ticket to winning the belts. They know that if Lomachenko faces him, shit, Ryan Garcia could possibly face. Well, I'm not going to say Ryan Garcia. I think that he still needs some major sharpening in his, tool set. But we'll see. All know what happens. But if Devin Haney, Gervonta Tank Davis, or Vasyl Lomachenko face George Kambosos next, he's probably going down. It just is what it is.
Bob Arum says, quote, "We are talking to the Kambosos Jr. people about Lomachenko going to Australia, which Lomachenko is prepared to do. It will be a huge fight in Australia, but we have Rona 19 problems to clear, which I think we can do. This fight against Kambosos Jr. in Australia is my first choice for Loma. Loma is well prepared to do it. Lomachenko had previously said about going into enemy territory to fight Kambosos. Of course, I need this chance. I would take it. In this weight division, we have a lot of great fighters, so we can organize great fights. Yada, yada, yada." Kambosos previously told Fox Sports about bringing the title defense home. He says, "We've got to really let Australia know what's going on and how big this fight could be. This will be the biggest fight in Australian history. It'll be a stadium fight, Sydney or Melbourne. We're in negotiations with both. It'll be very exciting. It wouldn't be real to the crowd if I told them I was coming back for an easy fight. What for? I'm coming for the big names, and we're already in negotiations with everybody." Now, I made a video about this. Devin Haney has basically said that he doesn't want Kambosos to duck. Just to recap, Devin Haney said, "Yo, George Kambosos, are we making this fight happen or what? I'm agreeing to all your terms, whether it's a vaccine or the
Well, according to Boxing Ego, when he shits all over Canelo Alvarez or another fighter that he don't like, what does he basically say? Take the fights that the fans want to see. Well, the main fight that the fans want to see right now between Mr. George Kambosos and Vasyl Lomachenko, that's the fight that's getting the majority of the votes. So, like I said, we'll see what happens.
starting to look like some ducking going on, Eddie Hearn. Now, Devin Haney also spoke to Sports Illustrated and stated that he even got himself the first regimen of a vaccine to make this a reality because there's strict protocols for entering Australia, and he wants to fight so bad that he's willing to get vaccinated for that, to make sure he's in compliance so he can get this fight. So he's willing to go to Australia, no problem. And then Kambosos responded, I love how you try to manipulate and lie to your fans, talk a big game, but show no actions, a bit like your fights. Yawn. I'm patiently waiting for all my belts for the offer from your boss, Mr. Eddie Hearn, because I got a stadium ready in Australia, but all I could see is excuses already. Now, one thing Kambosos just said in the previous quote from the article was that he's so excited to bring a fight in Australia, and he says that we're already in negotiations with both teams, and we're in negotiation with everyone. But then here he's saying that we're waiting for your boss to send us an offer. Eddie Hearn has also thrown out the idea of possibly doing the Middle East. Now, my thoughts on this have not changed one bit. Cambosa also said, I'm not here for Twitter fights like most of these cats. I'm here for real fights. To be honest, you got to give respect to myself, T.O., and Lomachenko. Out of the one emperor, four kings, and the Matrix, we all stepped up and fought, while the others fought on Twitter, just stating facts. Now you tell me who ducks. Now, I really...
Well, I'll say this: Mr. Devin Haney, overall, at once upon a time, did want that Vasyl Lomachenko fight. Vasyl Lomachenko declined, so it is what it is. So overall, Vasyl Lomachenko does have to be held responsible for that. And on top of that, it does not sound like George Kambosos is super interested in that Devin Haney fight either. But like I said, if he even takes the Gervonta Tank Davis or Vasyl Lomachenko fight, I can't necessarily be mad at that fight next, because both of those fighters, Gervonta Tank Davis and Vasyl Lomachenko, at the current point in time, they're at number 9 and 10 on my pound for pound list. So it is what it is. Now, of course, would I like to see the unification fight? Of course, I would love to see it. But at the end of the day, like I said, if he takes on a Vasyl Lomachenko or Gervonta Tank Davis, of course, we can't get mad at those fights.
actually don't prefer this response from George Kambosos because it sounds like very old media-ish to me, because we can date this back to Devin Haney when he called out Lomachenko, and he was calling him Nomachenko and calling for the fight, and then politics got in the way,
That's true.
and Lomachenko's team, which they've denied, and the WBC said that they did it, but nonetheless, they came out with the franchise champion in the lightweight division. So Lomachenko didn't take the opportunity to fight the number one at the time rated Devin Haney, so he was left out in the cold. So for George Kambosos, he's saying like,
And I agree with that. If you do not have the official WBC belt, you are not the official WBC champion, and you cannot call yourself completely unified because of some bullshit WBC franchise belt. But do I think that Vasyl Lomachenko is necessarily going to go after Devin Haney if he beats George Kambosos? No. Like I said, I have a very good idea who Vasyl Lomachenko more than likely is going to go after next. I think that he has a two-step plan. I think that plan overall is to go after George Kambosos, possibly regain his titles back if he can do that, and then go after Gervonta Tank Davis.
hey, you got to respect me, T.O., and Loma because we all duking them out, but that's because the politics played out. There's also famously put this list that Top Rank has, which is partly probably why they're being sued by Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford is basically stating that there's uh, racially motivated bias that comes from with the company. They lack diversity, etc. But there's this infamous NBF No Black Fighter list, and it's not even coming. It wasn't even revealed to the public by a black person. It was revealed by a Caucasian person, Cameron Duncan, who used to manage Crawford. And he said he's seen the list, he's seen the vision board or whatever at Top Rank, and they really have this no black fighter NBF list. So for Camboso,
You can argue that overall with certain fighters. Like I said, are certain black fighters avoided? You can certainly debate that. I don't have a problem with that. But Vasyl Lomachenko, when it comes to him, I don't think he's overly interested in that of a Devin Haney. But he has two targets on his mind. He has a two-step plan, at least when I take a look at overall what he said. This is how I decipher it. He's going to go after George Kambosos Jr., and then he's going to go right after Gervonta Tank Davis. And if Vasyl Lomachenko has the belts, and this is why I actually would prefer Vasyl Lomachenko to get the fight, because if Devin Haney overall ends up getting that fight, I believe more than likely that he would beat George Kambosos. It would be a great fight either way, so I don't really mind it. But Gervonta Tank Davis, I'm really dying over to see him in a big fight as well. And a Vasyl Lomachenko fight would be just what the doctor asked for. And if Vasyl Lomachenko, if he gets those belts back, he's going to trap Gervonta Tank Davis in a corner. And Gervonta Tank Davis basically will have no choice.
what he's saying right there is inaccurate. He's saying you got to give us all respect because we stepped up and fought. But Devin Haney was honestly trying to step up and fight against Lomachenko, but Lomachenko and his team didn't make that a reality. But now you see Lomachenko's team, they're all about a Kambosos fight because Teofimo beat him. So it's like the
Of course, because he has the titles.
powers that be, they want so bad for Lomachenko to try to get his hands on the titles again.
Of course, because it's a great thing for them if Vasyl Lomachenko overall is going to get his hands on the title. It's a great thing overall for them because Lomachenko is highly marketed. He's highly hyped up when it comes down to it. And I do think that he has some real, substance there. And if Vasyl Lomachenko is able to get those titles, he's going to go directly after Gervonta Tank Davis.
And I really don't care for the Lomachenko. I think that's probably the
Of course, you don't care about the Lomachenko fight. And listen what he says here.
weakest. I'm not even capping. I'm being real. I would rather see. I don't think Ryan Garcia deserves the fight with Kambosos, but I would rather see it. Let's see some new blood. And
So you'd rather see Ryan Garcia versus George Kambosos Jr. Why? Because Ryan Garcia is apparently undefeated and he's new blood. No, you want overall Ryan Garcia to possibly get that fight over Lomachenko because then all in all, whoever were to win the titles, they're easy targets. It is what it is. And I think that some of these guys, when it comes down to it, they realize that, now don't get me wrong, they were calling for a Vasyl Lomachenko versus Devin Haney fight a long time ago. So I can't necessarily say that they're afraid all in all that Vasyl Lomachenko is just going to beat those guys. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. But do I think that they also realize that Gervonta Tank Davis, that if Vasyl Lomachenko, that if he beats a George Kambosos, that he's going to go after Gervonta Tank Davis next? Yes, I do. And Ego's going to hint at that because he's going to say something here all in all that makes you realize that he knows what's up. But let's see what he says.
some of the younger guys fight. We've already seen Lomachenko, and he's already 2 losses in, and he doesn't even have 20 fights.
Right, but come on. Like, you can make that point all you want to, but let's overall rehash those 2 losses. One loss overall was to Orlando Salido in the second fight of his career, and he improved ever since then when it came down to it. And then the second loss of his career, of course, was to Teofimo Lopez, which, of course, Vasyl Lomachenko did not fight very, very well. But like I said, Vasyl Lomachenko clearly does have a very, very high amount of boxing pedigree. So it is what it is. Vasyl Lomachenko, like I said, he is one of the most popular boxers out there. So it is what it is. And on top of that, he does have pound for pound pedigree on a certain amount of people's list. So he's a very dangerous fight and a very big fight for anyone out there.
To me, and it doesn't. I don't think it'll be big for the division. So I agree with Devin Haney right here. You see on the screen.
It won't be very big for the division. The Vasyl Lomachenko versus George Kambosos Jr. fight, it's the biggest fight that could possibly happen next, besides the Gervonta Tank Davis fight for George Kambosos Jr. Now, some people may say, oh, what are you talking about? That's a unification fight. I understand your point, but at the end of the day, when you talk about it, like I said, the fans have spoken. It just is what it is. That's not me saying that I would not like to see the Devin Haney fight. If that's the fight that happens, it happens. But like I said, Vasyl Lomachenko, I do believe that that is the fight mainly that the fans want to see.
He said, "That's right, bro. Loma is out." So I don't know why. I mean, I can understand from a top rank perspective, they're trying to get in the mix, trying to see if Lomachenko can get these belts back. But I just don't think it's a big fight like they're making it out to be with Lomachenko. Lomachenko is not a big draw. Like, no matter what you say, Lomachenko, the numbers are showing you that. How
You can say that all you want to. Lomachenko's numbers overall don't seem to be on the Canelo Alvarez level or maybe even on the Gervonta Tank Davis level, but Lomachenko is a big draw. Make the same points overall that about Lomachenko like you do about Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. When people were going after your boy Gervonta Tank Davis, you were saying all this shit about, oh, well, he's allegedly not this big star, but LeBron James goes to his fights. There's a multitude of celebrities that go to Lomachenko's, even his fights overall against Nakatani and Richard Comey. There were certain celebrities there. So it is what it is, or certain celebrities talking about his fight like a Mark Wahlberg, who's an A-grade celebrity at this point in time. So Lomachenko is a big fight for anyone out there. You can say all that bullshit all you want to, but you don't truly believe that.
many people truly?
Or if you do believe that when it comes down to it, you're just basing that off of certain numbers. But when you take a look at that overall, no, Lomachenko, it's very clear that he is a big fight for anyone out there.
We watched the Richard Comey fight, and I'm not talking about like radical, diehard boxing fans, because to get the masses and to amass a crazy following and astronomical numbers like Floyd Mayweather, Pacquiao, and
Right, but does Devin Haney have an astronomical following? let's be real. Devin Haney's only following is out of the LDBC and new media. And that's not me necessarily trying to go after Devin Haney. I appreciate what Devin Haney's able to do. He deserves a certain amount of respect, and I respect him for going after some of the bigger fights out there. But like I said, if you're just trying to sit here and say that Vasyl Lomachenko, that he's clearly not a big draw, and you're just acting like he's some bum on the side of the road, no. There's a deeper meaning to why you don't want this fight to happen, and I know why it is. I know why you and the rest of overall people that don't want that fight to happen, we all know why it is. And you notice all in all with Vasyl Lomachenko, they make over all these points. Oh, well, he already has 2 losses, but they never made the same bullshit excuse with like Bernard Hopkins or, another fighter overall that they liked many years ago. Because Bernard Hopkins, he always usually lost his bigger fights. but people, when he went on to get that chance against Kelly Pavlik, who was undefeated, or, when he got that chance overall against Antonio Tarver or some of these other guys, you think any of those guys bitched the same way and said, oh, well, don't give Bernard Hopkins that much of a chance because he already has a few losses on his record. Now, of course, he had, 50-some fights on his resume. But we all know why Lomachenko, people take a look at Lomachenko and they'll say, well, he already has 2 losses and doesn't even have 20 fights. Yes, but the dude is a 3-weight division champion and he's fought consistent champion after champion after champion or former champion. So let's just not sweep Vasyl Lomachenko to the side of the road here like he's just some bum off the street.
Conor McGregor, you need.
It's the same thing with Guillermo Rigondeaux. Guillermo Rigondeaux has 2 losses on his resume, one to Vasyl Lomachenko. And if Guillermo Rigondeaux were to get a title shot, I don't think I'd be hearing any complaining from you. But it is what it is.
More than just die-hard boxing fans. So how many people are really checking for Lomachenko at this current point? And I think
thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands. Whenever I do certain videos and whenever I talk about Vasyl Lomachenko, it usually sometimes is more viewed overall than what I would talk about, certainly than what I would talk about a Devin Haney. Vasyl Lomachenko has more star power than what a Devin Haney would. It just is what it is. And they can make the same point, oh, well, Devin Haney gets paid more. Yeah, but that's over at the zone. When you actually talk about people, like I said, take a look at the voters. The voters don't lie. The fans don't lie. They say that they want the Lomachenko versus George Kambosos Jr. fight to happen next.
The division needs new life breathed into it. And I think this can happen with Kambosos versus Gervonta Davis, Devin Haney. Even though I don't think, as I mentioned earlier.
Now notice once again, he doesn't mind the Gervonta Davis versus George Kambosos Jr. fight happening. Once again, these guys, like I said, and I don't always necessarily agree with ESPN or quote unquote old media. Like I said, I'm a person by myself. I don't jump on anyone's, star or bandwagon or anything like that. Like I said, I come up with my own opinions, my own little analyzations. I don't agree overall with anyone out there 100%. But when it comes down to it, like I said, just like overall ESPN or quote-unquote old media, new media as well, including Mr. Boxing Ego here, they have their own little, machinations as well.
That Ryan Garcia, with how his last year played out, I don't think he deserves it. I still think it would be better for the status of the lightweight division for these young guys to try to scrap with Kambosos and carry the torch. And the way guys like Devin Haney has acquitted himself, I think it'll also be better. Because
I wonder if you were saying the same thing when Bernard Hopkins fought Antonio Tarver or Kelly Pavlik and said, no, you know what? Or if Guillermo Rigondeaux were to get a title fight next, let's say Guillermo Rigondeaux were to face Iowa anyway. I wonder if the same dude said, well, you know what? Guillermo Rigondeaux, he don't even have 25 fights, I believe, because I'm not sure if he even does. And he already has 2 losses, so let's give another young gun, a shot. I bet he wouldn't be saying that. So like I said, we all know what that's about, but it is what it is. And listen, to a degree, I understand Ego's annoyance. I get it. Because he's basically looking at Vasyl Lomachenko like, here we go again with the great white hype. But listen, Vasyl Lomachenko is a real deal fighter. And I would be particularly interested to see, because I do believe that he's a great fighter, and I do believe that he has a great amount of potential. Is he going to be another Guillermo Rigondeaux? Or is he a person all in all that can really rebound in his career? We'll see.
Lomachenko were to beat Kambosos, and he might even be the favorite, right? But if he were to beat
You notice overall what he said there? He might be the favorite, so what is he saying? Vasyl Lomachenko more than likely would beat a George Kambosos. They know overall whoever gets to George Kambosos first, they know all in all that they're going to get those belts, more than likely. And whoever, if it's Devin Haney or Gervonta Davis, they're going to try to promote them top 5, top 10 pound for pound. But if it's Vasyl Lomachenko, they're going to look at it completely differently.
The division goes back dormant, and it goes back to a state of just politics and games. And I think that's how Top Rank would probably...
Everyone has their own politics, Mr. Ego. And you should know about that. You've spread a certain amount of your own politics and your own narratives, but it is what it is. All right. Just as old media has their own little politics and their own little machinations and games, you do as well. And I've seen you post a certain amount of your narratives out there. So it is what it is.
Choose to play it with Lomachenko.
But no, Vasyl Lomachenko, the reason why personally I would prefer the Vasyl Lomachenko versus George Kambosos Jr. fight is because if Vasyl Lomachenko, if he beats George Kambosos Jr., I know who he's going after next. It's going to be Gervonta Tank Davis.
They're going to start cloud chasing maybe Gervonta Davis and saying
You hear that? You hear overall what he just said there? They're going to start cloud chasing Gervonta Tank Davis. That's basically his way of saying that he knows overall what's up as well. He knows just like I do. If Vasyl Lomachenko beats George Kambosos Jr., he's going to go after Gervonta Tank Davis. And they're going to protect him because he is one of their main assets.
Lomachenko's the king of the hill because he got the belts, and it's going to be that.
What is Mr. Ego saying here? He's basically saying that, Vasyl Lomachenko, I don't want him to get the belts back. And just because he beats George Kambosos, that doesn't mean overall that he's the king of the hill. So what would it really matter for then if George Kambosos versus Devin Haney happens next? Because sure, it's a unification, but no one really looks at George Kambosos Jr. as this A-grade champion. Once again, all in all, if you really take a look at what people have to say, you can tell overall what they truly think.
Again, versus if Devin Haney.
And basically the way that he said cloud chasing Gervonta Tank Davis, well, Vasyl Lomachenko has been allegedly cloud chasing Gervonta Tank Davis for years. Because he's called him out for years upon years upon years upon years, and Gervonta Tank Davis has never accepted the fight. And that's not me saying that Vasyl Lomachenko has accepted every single fight either. He did not accept the Devin Haney fight, but at the end of the day, do you think that the Devin Haney versus Gervonta Tank Davis fight is just going to happen next? I'm not so sure about that. Gervonta Tank Davis, all in all, he's being very heavily protected right now as well. And you have protected him as well. You've done him no favors. So at the current moment in time, like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out.
It's Kambosos. We will finally undo the mess that the WBC has created with the whole franchise champion and the confusion with the belt. So it's just more positives for Kambosos to fight some of the younger fighters in the lightweight division.
Well, the only way overall that it's going to wipe out the WBC confusion overall that Mr. Mauricio Sullivan has provided is that if Devin Haney overall is able to get his unification title shot, it's not going to wipe out or it's not going to give any clarity overall to this WBC situation if anyone else but Devin Haney faces George Kambosos Jr. That wouldn't make any sense. The only one overall that it would give clarity to overall is the one that has the WBC title. Like I said, they know overall whoever gets George Kambosos Jr. next, more than likely they're going to win that fight. That's why they don't want Vasyl Lomachenko to get that fight.
And again, I'm going to always, every time I'm talking about this lightweight division, I'm going to keep bringing this up. It's ironic when there's a black fighter who has a controversial or a close fight, and it's almost immediate pressure for that person to give or go into a rematch, an immediate situational type of rematch, if they had a loss or a controversial win or an unexpected upset loss. But then when Teofimo, a non-black fighter like Teofimo Lopez, loses, and he loses bad to Kambosos, and his name's not even running, he's just leaving the division, and there's no pressure, just like Lomachenko.
I agree with you a little bit there. I would say overall that, that's not the worst point in the world. Whenever Mayweather or, whenever Gervonta Tank Davis or whenever certain black fighters or Andre Ward, for example, whenever they had certain controversial fights. But of course, that being said, there's been other fighters that had controversial fights as well, and they were called for a rematch, whether it be Canelo versus Gennady Golovkin. But of course, when Canelo had that one with Lara, there was not a lot of people who called for it. But of course, there's not a certain amount of people that called, for the Araceli Lara versus Jarrett Hurd rematch either, and certain people overall thought that was very close. So, I don't know. It also can depend on the fighter.
Well, and that's another bad thing for Lomachenko is Lomachenko has never avenged any of his losses from Teofimo or the Salido loss. It's just like it's expected that he can bounce back from beating other guys, Rocky Martinez.
Yes, well, there's other fighters that have done that in their career. Bernard Hopkins did that in his career. Do you think overall that Bernard Hopkins ever avenged the Jermaine Taylor losses? I mean, he had the rematch, but he never could beat him. So it is what it is. He never was able to defeat Chad Dawson. He never avenged the Joe Calzaghe loss. So this is a big question about Vasyl Lomachenko. Can he bounce back? And maybe later on he will defeat Teofimo Lopez in a rematch, but we'll see. He asked for that Teofimo Lopez rematch. Teofimo didn't want to give it to him. So that's not Vasyl Lomachenko's fault.
Gary Russell, or he could beat Komei or Nakatani, other guys that really aren't world beaters, right? And except
Notice how he mentions Gary Russell Jr. Gary Russell Jr., they tried to hype this dude up very, very majorly, but now that he's no longer one of their main assets anymore when it comes down to, because he turned down the Devin Haney fight. Not only that, but Gervonta Tank Davis and Shakur Stevenson, they mainly didn't been down there. They know that Gary Russell Jr., he's not going to beat any of those guys. So all of a sudden they're going to tear down Gary Russell Jr. Like I said, certain people may say, oh, well, you say, they prop up, certain fighters overall, their own demographic, but they tear down these fighters. You have to really pay attention overall to who their main assets are. Gary Russell Jr. no longer matters to them anymore. Just like Keith Thurman, just like overall, even to a degree with some of them, Errol Spence Jr., depending on the channel.
for Gary Russell, I rate Gary Russell. But at the time, Gary Russell's resume was not what it is today. But anyway.
Now, you also see what he said there. A lot of these people, when they were calling for Vasyl Lomachenko to beat that of a Devin Haney, a lot of these same channels, they said, well, Devin Haney is this Mayweather, protege, and, he could be a future Hall of Famer. Like I said, there's so much bullshit these guys have said, basically. They're not going to give Lomachenko for a certain amount of the, they're not going to give him credit overall for a certain amount of the things that he has. But it is what it is, or even the accomplishments that he has. But it is what it is. Listen, and to a degree, I do understand. But no, the Gary Russell Jr. win, that is still to this day the only loss that Gary Russell Jr. has on his resume. And that was Vasyl Lomachenko's third fight. So, we can sit here and take a look at that, but why are you trying to act like Vasyl Lomachenko's resume was so much more ahead of his? Sure, he had that big amateur, pedigree, but for that being the third fight in Vasyl Lomachenko's career, you have to give him a hell of a lot of credit for defeating an A-grade fighter, in my opinion, like a Gary Russell Jr. If you want to debate him as an A- fighter, that's your business. But at the end of the day, Gary Russell Jr. was undefeated. He may have even been the slight favorite in that fight, and Vasyl Lomachenko was able to embarrass him.
Beating Nakatani and Komei, that doesn't really, to me, earn you a coveted opportunity. Meanwhile, guys like Devin Haney, he's been positioned in such a horrible way where he's making a lot of money, but every single time
he's making a lot of money, but he's not a bigger draw than Vasyl Lomachenko. And certain people overall, they'll say, well, how does that even make sense? The zone overall is paying Devin Haney overall more money, but when you talk about actually who gets talked about more, who usually gets more pound for pound acclaim, I'm not even sure how many viewers Devin Haney gets. Vasyl Lomachenko very clearly, even though I don't know if he's getting paid as much when it comes down to by Top Rank, Vasyl Lomachenko is usually always talked about more. That's why the fans voted for him to face Vasyl Lomachenko next, even over Devin Haney. And Vasyl Lomachenko at the current moment in time, he's not even a champion.
Situations come, he gets the short end of the stick. He was trying to fight Luke Campbell. Top Rank came in and scooped Luke Campbell, so he didn't get as number 2. And Luke Campbell at the time was rated number 1. They should have fought for the vacant WBC title vacated by Mikey Garcia. And then Devin Haney gets shafted because that...
Yes, that title was vacated by Mikey Garcia because guess what? He didn't want to face Vasyl Lomachenko. So it is what it is. There has been a few A-grade fighters that have not wanted to face Vasyl Lomachenko. Now, is that me saying that Vasyl Lomachenko has taken on every single fight? No, it hasn't. He did overall seem to give Devin Haney the shaft. But at the end of the day, Mikey Garcia and Gervonta Tank Davis, they've been avoiding that dude, Vasyl Lomachenko, like the plague for the past several years. So it would be very interesting to see Vasyl Lomachenko if he can maybe get a fight not only with just one of them, but maybe both of them. It'll be very interesting.
Vacant title Lomachenko fought for, right? Against Luke Campbell, and it left Devin Haney out in the cold. Then when Luke Campbell loses to Lomachenko, the number 1 guy became Devin Haney, and then Lomachenko does the politic thing, asks the WBC, which is confirmed, and I'll probably make another updated video.
That is true.
Oh, y'all must have forgot. And he's asking for the franchise championship like Canelo, the designation, which they said was non-transferable, that they later changed in the Teofimo Loma fight, and Devin Haney got shafted again. So now you mean to tell me that Top Rank's trying to shaft Devin Haney again, all for Lomachenko, who's not popping like that? I don't want to...
Who's not popping like that? You know damn well that Vasyl Lomachenko, when it comes down to it, is somewhat popping. Just stop. Like I said, you try to say overall that Vasyl Lomachenko, he doesn't even have that much star power. Bullshit. If Vasyl Lomachenko fought any of the top 135 pounders, it'd be a mega fight. And you know that. But it is what it is.
See it. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. And I'm out. The future is.
But anyways, that's really about it for today. But it's going to be very particularly interesting to see who gets that fight. I would love to see the Vasyl Lomachenko versus George Kambosos Jr. fight. I also would like to see the Devin Haney versus George Kambosos Jr. fight as well. Or, all in all, more than likely, Devin Haney maybe versus a, Gervonta Tank Davis or Vasyl Lomachenko, because I just don't think George Kambosos, when I take a look at him, he doesn't really scream elite. But it is what it is. But anyways, we'll see what happens. Should be very particularly interesting. And we'll see what happens later on.